Even though Don's cyborg is already recording, you're now recording on my cloud. Hope everybody's doing all right. As a reminder, you're muted. If you want to jump in, a lot of you are off camera right now. That's fine. You can't raise your hand like physically and wave at me, but if you can find the raise hand button, throw that up, and we'll get you in so that you can chat. And there's Dawn, and we'll do it that way. So basically today, the NAR just put out a couple of publications. I did send them to you in email. Hopefully you had a chance to kind of review them a little bit before today. But basically today we're going to go over that because, you know, as has happened with the entire practice change in the lawsuit, things have shifted a little bit. And in this particular case, when it comes to sellers anyways, we as a company, we being NextHome in its entirety, kind of disagree with part of the NAR's shift. Now, let me give you a little bit of background on that as to why we might feel that way. And I feel pretty strongly about this. So you all have probably heard me say, you know, it's been about 2 years since I first said, hey guys, we just had this meeting with the CEO of NextHome. He told us about these major changes that are coming down the pipe by way of lawsuits. He told us we're going to lose, and he told us things are going to change, and they're going to change like this. And that was back when everybody else in the real estate world was kind of like, yeah, whatever. It's not going to happen. It's never going to happen. Our industry is untouchable. The way that we run commissions is untouchable. Nothing's going to change. So he cried foul a long, long, long time ago, for lack of a better term, and started getting us ready for it. And one of the reasons that you guys are also bored about talking about this and working with this practice change is that you've literally been talking about it for about 18 months at a minimum, where everybody else in the world's been talking about it for about 4. So while some of it sounds real repetitive and old hat to you, most of your competitors are not in that camp. What does that have to do with anything with what we're going to talk about today? So our CEO, James, in my mind, is probably one of the leading, not only knowledge banks on all of these practice changes, but also a leader in understanding the nuance of all these practice changes and what comes next, and how little things that we do can turn into big problems later. Like I said, he was kind of on it from the beginning. He ended up being on the NAR settlement board. He ended up being interviewed by everybody and their mother and their brother about, you know, what was going to happen and how to handle it. He was kind of on the forefront of changing of the forms and the path of a transaction and the documents at the national level, which trickled down to the state level because he's also a California resident. Okay, so he also understands CAR real well. This guy's just ahead of it, and he's said very, very clearly that the next 2 lawsuits will involve a rehash of commission and a rehash of, or excuse me, not a rehash, but it'll be based on steering. Okay. So the next thing that everybody class action lawsuits our industry on is the steering of buyers. So we'll be talking about that today. And then we'll be talking about the coupling of commissions today. Now, let me press the rewind button for just a little bit so that you understand why we were sued. Okay, and this will probably make a little more sense once we get into the sheets. Can anybody articulate for me clearly why we were sued as an industry? If you can articulate that clearly for me and all of the nuance of it, please raise your hand. No. Me neither. But listen, the basic premise of it was this. Our industry as a whole paid 2 parties per transaction with this thing called cooperating commission. The fact that we required a seller to pay somebody that he or she did not have an agency relationship with is a form of what's called tying commissions and a violation of antitrust law. Okay, let me say that again. The practice of tying commissions together and having a seller pay someone that they don't have a contractual relationship on is a violation of antitrust laws. Okay? Therefore, since it's a violation of those laws, you can't require them to do it. Let me say that again. You can't require them to do it. Okay? One of the requirements of the MLS before any of this happened was if you're going to list a property on MLS, you must post a cooperating commission. Okay? They said you can't do that. We just told you why. All right. So we said, great, we'll take it off the MLS. We'll not make that a requirement of the MLS anymore. We'll discard the practice of doing it, of doing cooperating commissions. We'll get rid of that and we'll pay you $450 million. Please go away. Right? Then the world started saying, well, we don't want to change. We're not going to do it. We're going to advertise it in other platforms. And the NAR said, no, please don't do that. If you do that, you're putting yourself at risk. Okay, you're putting yourself at risk. And then everybody said, we're going to leave the NAR and stop paying our membership fees. And NAR said, oh, you don't want to do that. Here's all the good things we do. And then lo and behold, we'll get to the sheet next. The NAR says now, okay, well, co-op's cool, but just don't put it on the MLS. You got to advertise it in other places. Let me rewind. We didn't get sued because we put it on the MLS. Okay. We got sued because we did it. Now, the MLS required us to post it, and that's why the MLS got in trouble, but we got sued because we did it. If everybody agreed that we shouldn't have done that, and we had to pay for it, do you think it's really going to matter if we just don't put it on the MLS and put it on another website? No. It's round 2. It's the beginning of round 2, you guys. It's the beginning of round 2. And so before we jump into the sheet, I'll say this. We're going to go over the sheet. We're going to read it. You're going to see where NAR starts saying, well, talk to your sellers about a cooperating commission and why it's important. We will absolutely positively not do it. We just won't. Okay. Number 1, we don't want to get sued. Number 2, we already found a way around it. And by the way, I think the way around it works really, really well. Okay. In the beginning of the change, I was a little bit skeptical. After the change took place and after we've had a little bit of chance to test drive it and use it, I really, 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 and I'm going to ask Brendan to chime in on this because he's had some experience with it too. I really, really, really like and prefer a contracted buyer's relationship and a request for compensation on an SPBB form with a purchase agreement. I really, really like that. Okay, for a lot of reasons. After test driving this for now 2 or 3 months on 4 or 5 transactions, okay, I got to tell you, I'm a huge fan. So we don't want to do it because of those 2 reasons, right? Number 1, I think that we don't want to get sued. I know we don't want to get sued. Number 2, I think that this process makes our industry better. Number 3, I think the NAR is just treading water and trying to maintain membership and not get people pissed off. And we're going to end up here anyways. This is where we're going to end up. So you might as well just do it that way. Brendan, give me your take because you've test drove it now on 2 or 3 transactions as well. What new way versus old way? What's your take?
I honestly, it feels the same to me. It's just another piece of paperwork though, which is fine. And also too, it does, I feel like, open up the door for sellers to negotiate down commissions. I think that most people are trying to take advantage of that because they know they can right now. Um, do I dislike it? Not necessarily. Do I like the old way? Yeah, sure. So, um, I am not a huge fan of the contractual part with the buyer and the agent. It's just not how I operated. Now it's fine. I'm okay with doing it, but I'm kind of, I think, old school in the business where I liked operating on a handshake. And if you don't want to do business with me, then so be it. Um,
Hmm.
so that part I don't really care for, to be honest with you. But the rest of
Hmm.
it, it works fine, I think. It's
Hmm.
it's just another form of negotiation, though.
Yeah. I left that part out, and I think you're absolutely right. I think that it gives the sellers a sense of empowerment. Knowing, they could always negotiate this crap, but every single one of them that I talk to, when we frame it the way we talk about framing it, and we tell them, hey, you should fully expect a request for compensation with any offer you get because it's coming. I mean, they all say the same thing. And the first thing that comes out of their mouth is, yeah, but that's negotiable, right? Well, yeah, it is, just like it always has been. We leave that part out. But
Yeah.
um, I think you're right. I think it gives them a feeling of empowerment that they felt like maybe they didn't have before. And I like that. Now, that may be because I spend more time dealing with sellers than I do with buyers, and I like them feeling that way. But I'm really, really partial to what we're doing now versus what we've been doing for the past 20 years. I like it much better.
And I think also too, if we do our jobs correctly as listing agents, it doesn't have an effect really. You're going to get an offer or possibly multiple offers, and that part can be negotiated. Or you can look at the net sheet for your sellers and they can go, okay, this is what we wanted to net. We're okay.
Yeah.
Or they can try to tease it down a little bit if they need to.
Mm-hmm.
Commission, that is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Um, I'm looking for a button. I don't have a button. Anybody else that wants to chime in or give their take on this before we give into the sheets? I know a lot of you aren't on camera. I'm going to see if I can. Let's see. There's Brendan. I'm going to give you some power here. Okay. So, not your robot though, Don. There you go. You can unmute yourself right now, especially if you're in a car, and chime in on this if you want. If not, we'll move on. You probably don't want to chime in on it because Brendan and I are tough to follow. We're always right. So, uh, but if you have a take on new way versus old way, we would love to hear it before we get into the sheets.
I think Brendan's right. I mean, it's basically ends up being the same. Now we just got more paperwork to deal with. The end result is, buyers don't always have the funds to cover that, so they're going to ask anyway. And as a buyer's agent, you're dumb if you don't ask in the first place.
Right. Yeah, Steve, good point. Steve, what about the part, have your sellers responded in a way that's different in the past? Like, do they think they suddenly have this power they never had before, or have you not had any experience with that?
I mean, the ones that I think it's only two is, no, they really don't see any difference.
Okay.
I don't know if it's just me not, I believe I explained everything well enough, you know, but I also told them, hey, they're going to put in a request quite probably, and, you know, we'll be at that.
Yeah. Okay. Bryn, go. There you go. Do it now.
Uh, okay, so I wanted to add to that too, is when I was just thinking about what they're gaining, and really they're gaining about a 0.5% of commission, in my opinion. Because we're going from the standard of what's usually 2.5%, and they're negotiating it down to 2%. So, and if that gives them a feeling of control, or gives them a feeling of that they've saved some money, then okay, good for them. But I think in the long run, it's not that much really.
Mhm.
And like Steve was saying, some people just aren't even negotiating it at all. They're just doing the 2.5 and calling it a day.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Has anybody here written an offer and asked for more than 2.5 on a buyer's representation on an SPBB form as a buyer's rep? Has anybody asked for more than 2.5? I haven't. I know that. I've been tempted to, even though my BRBCs with these people says 3. When it got right down to it, I only asked for 2.5 on the SPBB form because I didn't want to counter. I just wanted them to sign my offer.
I think for myself, if it's not a multiple offer situation, and I know that going into it, I'd write 3 all day because I know they're going to negotiate down probably to 2.5, and then I'll happily take my standard 2.5.
Mm-hmm. Rather than writing it at 2.5, I'm probably getting ticked down to 2.0.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Anybody else on the buyer side of the equation have any comment?
I always like to chime in regarding my generation, if you guys can hear me okay.
We can hear you.
Okay, so I mean, obviously I'm newer at this and a new agent, but I always like to, chime in and remind everyone that, I mean, in my situation, my generation always thought that they had to pay their buyer's agent anyway, or that they had to pay for their realtor or do the commission that way. So it's really nothing new when I go into it, one, being new at this, and two, this being new, it's just normal to go into the world and say, here, sign this thing, I'm your agent. So I think that almost having the experience in that past practice kind of like causes things that doesn't have to be unless you're working with older people that have bought houses previously, didn't have to pay for their buyer's realtor, obviously. So I thought that I always think that's an interesting perspective to share with everyone.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you. That's huge. It's yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, after doing this for a while or doing this for a long while, we can kind of tend to forget that for some folks that are coming up in the industry, either real estate side of or realtor side of things or buyer seller side of things, they don't even know any different. So when we're talking about something that's a huge deal and a huge change, they have no experience with anything else otherwise. So it's really not that big of a deal. And hey, fingers crossed. I'll take that all day long. So okay, guys, thank you for chiming in on that. Let's go through this NAR stuff and get up to speed on that. Where's my share? Here's my share. We're gonna do the desktop. Share it. Oh wow, I got stuff everywhere. All right. Okay. All right. So first off, let's do the do's and don'ts from the NAR about working with buyers. And we're going to blitz through this pretty quick because you have the sheets in your email if you really want to super geek out on it and get way deep into it. But I don't feel like we're doing our job if we don't cover it with you and say pay attention to this stuff. So you know, this part that they're putting out here now, they talk about the consequences of what happens to you if you don't do these things and if you don't abide by the terms of the settlement. And I like that because I think that there's still a lot of people out there that absolutely positively are just like, we're not going to do it and we're going to do it however we want. The do's when you're working with a buyer. Oh, the other thing I like is this sheet's full of hyperlinks, right? Those hyperlinks are actually pretty helpful in NAR publications or NAR website pages, so that if you're getting stuck or you're looking for some words or you're looking for some scripting and you can't get a hold of us, there's some really good graphics and value demonstrations in those things for you guys to use if you need them. But NAR says their dues of working with a buyer. Again, we're always going to start with this because this has been part of the quote unquote realtor brand since the realtor brand was invented. And that is demonstrating value compared to other real estate agents. Fortunately for us, it is really, really easy to do this graphically because of the presentation software that we possess. Okay. Very, very easy to do. So it's one thing to be able to talk about it and articulate what we do as a buyer's agent and why we're better than other people. It's something else entirely to be able to put that in front of them in print with, you know, really nicely done graphics, really nicely done layout, all of those things for them to review over and over and over again. So we're very, very lucky that we have that. You've got to explain what the BRBC is and why we are asking them to sign it. Okay, you've got to explain what it is. You've got to explain what your side of that equation is. You've got to explain what their side of that equation is. You've got to explain that there is potential for financial impact to them when they sign it and when you sell them a house. Okay, now if you use my addendum that I have in your new agent shared folder, and you're using the compensation addendum that I attach to my BRBCs, then you're going to have an easy talking point that, look, you're not going to have to reach into your pocket unless that's what you decide to do. Okay, I'm going to go get my money from the seller. I'm going to be successful at that, but you still have to explain that it could happen, right? It could happen. Make sure that you're clear with them. I'm getting better at this, but I'm not great at it. And that's not saying much because every buyer I work with is a referral or in my sphere, so I should be really good at this. You got to make sure that they understand that they have to sign up, they have to sign this agreement, they have to sign with you before you can tour a home. Okay, now, does that mean that you have to have that signed with them before you're talking to them about housing or before you're talking to them about the purchasing process? No, it doesn't. You can have conversations with them. You can send them listings. You can talk about the market. You can talk about pricing. You can talk about what they're looking for. You can talk about all those things, but you can't get out of the car and pop the lockbox unless you have that form signed, right? And if you do that, you're in violation of our practice requirements. So understand that. There's another hyperlink here for NAR's written guide on buyer agreements. They're going to have a lot more words on paper than you do coming out of your mouth. We talked about this a little bit before. Make sure that they understand the realities of compensation and the potential costs. Again, from the beginning, we've said that we'll include an addendum that says you're not going to pay me, the seller is, but make sure that they understand that ultimately they can be responsible. And if you're unable to get your compensation paid seller direct, they have choices. Okay, they're not locked in forever. They have choices. They can not use you. They can pursue the property on their own. They can choose to make that payment. They can choose to renegotiate that fee structure with you so that they can afford that payment. Know that this is a little bit misleading, but FHA rules currently state that agent compensation can't be financed through a mortgage. That's not just FHA mortgages, that's all mortgages, okay? Federal Housing Authority has say on all kinds of financing. I think we'll get there in the year 2025. The mortgage rules will be different. We'll be able to finance compensation, and this conversation is going to shift once again in a very dramatic way, because once buyers are able to easily finance their realtor's fees inside of their mortgage, the sellers aren't going to pay a dime. I promise you, not one dime. Once they find out that a buyer can finance it, their days of paying any kind of compensation to buyers are done. Ensure that your buyer understands all the options and advocate for terms of the offer your buyer needs. This is you being a fiduciary, okay? Know and follow local laws, state and local laws. You guys are pretty up to speed on that. Anything that we tell you to do or not tell you to do is going to keep you out of trouble there. The don'ts with working a buyer according to the NAR: don't misrepresent anything, including the nature and the purpose of the written buyer agreement. Okay, I know that you would never misrepresent anything intentionally. I know who you guys are, but we all could get into a little bit of trouble with misrepresenting maybe even unintentionally misrepresenting the nature of the agreement, right? We instinctively want to kind of downplay this thing, okay? And say, it's no big deal. Don't worry about it. This is just something that we have to do now. The stupid lawyers did this, stupid lawyers did that. Don't worry about it. I'm going to get my money from the seller. I just need you to sign it before I can take you through a house because that's the new rule. Okay? That's only half true, right? We got to make sure that even if we have, let's take my clients, for example, the buyer clients that I have, they know me, they love me, we've worked together before, they'll sign anything I tell them to sign, okay? They don't really care, they're not gonna read it, especially if I tell them, look, this isn't gonna be any financial impact to you, I need you to sign this, they'll just do it, all right? That's me violating this little clause right here, okay? I have to tell those people, hey, slow down, look, I need to explain this to you. I need to explain what this is. I need you to understand that you can trust me that I'm gonna take care of it for you, but I still need to explain it to you in the entirety. And don't attempt to work around with the practice change requirements. This cracks me up, you guys, because the bottom of this sheet says don't work around the practice change requirements. The seller sheet tells you how to work around the practice change requirements. But be that as it may, you know, I almost called it the NRA. The NAR is saying, hey, don't violate the practice change requirements. And more importantly than the NAR saying that, guys, I'm saying that. Don't violate the practice change requirements. Just don't do it. All right. Now we'll go to the seller sheet. Oh, there's more. Sorry. Don't accept more comp than is on your BRBC. Okay, we know that, right? That's why I tell you execute your BRBC at 3 or more. And if you only get 2.5, that's fine. But if you execute your BRBC at 2.5, you can't then get 3, right? Going back to Brendan's conversation, he knows if it's not a multiple offer situation, on his SPBB form, he's going to request 3% direct from the seller. Maybe he's good. His offer's so good. Maybe he's so good that he gets it. He's in a real situation. If he gets that 3% from the seller and his BRBC only says 2.5, he's got a real problem. Okay. This is new. Remember when this all came out? They said, look, you're going to have to get your BRBC signed. And then you're going to have to submit it with your purchase agreement, and then you're going to have to submit it to escrow, and everybody's going to have to see it. No, we've gone another and better way, and that is we don't have to share it with anybody. Okay. Now the title company can request it. That's never going to change. The title company can request it, but they're not going to. Last thing they want is another piece of paper. Okay, so your BRBC is between you and your client. All right, there are some MLSs. Ours will probably be one of them that wants to do an occasional audit of an office. If they ask us for it, we'll give it to them, but it would be confidential at that point in time. It wouldn't go to the other side of the transaction. It would only be for the MLS audit purposes. I'm sure that that's going to happen. And here it is, right? Oop, do not steer. Hang on, guys. There we go. Do not steer. Okay. Let's talk about steering a little bit. We've talked about it a lot before, but we're going to talk about it again. Steering essentially is when an agent makes a bunch of phone calls while they're setting up listings. And one of the listings says, oh, hell yeah, my seller paid 2.5%, no brainer. Okay. They've been waiting for you. They'll pay 2.5%, no brainer. And another listing says, well, you know, we're willing to consider anything. Make sure that you submit your form and we'll take a look at your comp request. Okay. And that agent says, okay, Mr. Client, we've only got one house to look at, and takes it to the one that says, oh yeah, no brainer, we'll pay 2.5%. In a nutshell, that's what steering is. Okay. If you do that, you're really, really opening yourself up to potential problems. Not only our CEO, but also one of our CEO's good friends, the CEO of EXP, a little organization called EXP, has gone on record and said the next wave of class action lawsuits will have to do with client steering. Okay, no doubt about it. The next wave will have to do with client steering. All right, so if you don't want to have any steering problems, just adopt this this practice. Know that you're going to submit your request form on anything that you write. Don't even waste your time calling around to find out what somebody may or may not be offering. In our market, I'm here to tell you it doesn't matter. Everybody's expecting that form, okay? And show your client everything. Everything they want to see, everything they ask about, you show it to them. If you do those things, if you approach your business in that way, you will have zero problems with steering, right? Let me stop share for a minute. And then we'll go, before we go to seller, any questions on buyer form before we go to the seller form? Hands, no, chat box. Don's robots in the chat box only. Brendan's comment. Okay, we're going good. Let's go to sellers if we got no questions then. Seller. Okay. Around sellers, or are we still on buyers? That's the buyer form. Here's the seller form. All right. What the NAR says the do's and don'ts are for working with a seller. Again, this is all similar stuff. You got hyperlinks about everything that's seller oriented. You've got the warning. If you blow it, the consequences are severe. And we start out with the same thing as we do on buyers, and that is we got to demonstrate value. Look, same spiel. We're very, very lucky. We have an easy way to do that in conjunction with what we say. We have graphics to prove why we're better. And here it all goes, guys. Here it all goes, right? We're going to skip all this because we're not going to do it. Okay? We're not going to talk to our seller about an offer of compensation. What we are going to talk to our seller about is, look, you should fully expect that with any offer that we receive, there's going to be a form called the SPBB form where the buyer is requesting that you pay their broker, the buyer's broker, direct. The industry standard in our area is somewhere around 2.5%. You just have to know it's coming. Then you can get into, these are the reasons why you should consider that. Okay? That conversation is never going to get us into trouble. Okay? Prior to signing any listing agreement, make sure the seller understands all their options. We're going to help them understand this point right here by having that conversation I just talked about. They can expect that form to come. We're not going to advertise any kind of compensation in advance. We're not going to discuss any kinds of compensation in advance. We just know that the form's going to come. We know that the form's going to have a request somewhere between 2 and 3%. They need to know that they can respond to that and answer that, and none of that is set by law. Well, it's negotiable, right? Yes, it absolutely is. Just like it's always been. It's always been negotiable, Mr. or Mrs. Seller. You just didn't know that because NBC and all the other networks hadn't talked about it before. It's always been that way. You're going to skip this part. They want you to get approval from prior written approval to offer compensation. We're not going to need to worry about that because we're not going to do it. Are we going to inform them? Yes, we're going to inform them clearly that they can absolutely expect a request for compensation. Present all offers to the seller. I don't even need to cover that with you guys. You guys are going to present every offer to the seller regardless of what they ask for. I know that. Okay. Keep lines of communication open with your fellow industry professionals when it is to your client's advantage. What does that mean? Communicating with other brokers and agents helps you identify the best offer for your seller and fulfill your duty as their agent. Answer the phone when appraisers call, as they need to know the details of the transaction they are analyzing, including the sales they consider as potential comps. Wow. Okay. I guess there's some folks in the world that need to be told about that stuff. Follow all local and state laws. Great. Now here's the don'ts. Don't use the MLS to offer compensation. The settlement prohibits it. This prohibition applies to any MLS field. Okay. But go ahead and offer it in other places and talk about it? I don't think so. Absolutely not. I mean, is there anybody that does, anybody else, I'd love to hear it, that doesn't find the second and third paragraph up there and this paragraph right here completely contradictory and insane? Like, do they want us to get sued again? I just don't do it. We don't need to do it. I don't get this one either. Don't share your listing agreement with competitors. Why the hell would I? Like, do you need to tell us that? I mean, I won't even share my listing agreement with people in my office. Why would I share it with my competitors? I don't know. But our listing agreements are confidential, okay? They're between the brokerage and the client. They don't go any farther than that ever. Here we go again. Don't communicate the amount of an offer of compensation without your seller's instructions. We're just going to skip it. We're not going to do it. In here, don't ask for the BRBC. Okay? They're telling us right here, as listing agents, listing brokers, don't ask for the BRBC. All right? So again, a big 360 from where we started on August 17th, when the BRBC was like supposed to be put up on billboards. We're not there anymore. All right. So that's where we are. I'm pretty pleased to say that for the most part, this stuff is nothing new for you guys, other than the fact that the NAR kind of reversed course on this co-op thing. And we're not going to follow that. We're not going to do that. And we don't need to cover why again. You guys understand why we're not doing that. But thankfully, today, when they finally took the time to say, all right, we've been through all this, we're going to put out this publication to tell you guys what to do and not to do with buyers and sellers, it was stuff that we had pretty much already covered and pretty much planned on doing. So not a lot of new stuff, not a lot of surprises. Not a lot of things for us to worry about as individuals or as a company. Our marketing pieces are in line. Our presentation pieces are in line. We're good as far as that goes. So as far as I'm concerned, we move forward today, kind of business as usual, since we started talking about this stuff, and that's good news. That's about it. So anybody got anything to add? Anything else we need to cover, talk about, or questions that have come up for you in the last couple of weeks? Let's hear it. All right. Brendan's got his hand up. Unmuting Brendan. I'm going to give you guys all the power too.
Not to throw a humongous wrench in this whole thing, and I'd love to get your take on this, D. I did read an article, and I don't know how true this is yet. I did read an article. They're talking about the Arizona Metro list.
Yeah.
Or MLS is considering, or they're going to have non-member sign up.
Yeah.
So, I mean, so maybe this is all moving in that direction too, or we don't have to be members, or we can have access to MLS without that. Now what that looks like, I don't know. I don't know if I like that idea or not, but I think it's interesting.
Arizona might have gotten the press, but it's kind of been a movement in several MLSs across the country since all of this started. And that, but let me back up a step. So when has anybody ever heard of the the service called MLS listings? Have you guys heard of that yet? Heard anybody talking about that yet? So MLS Listings is the competitor of the standard MLS in the western region of the country. And what they did was they said, look, we know that everybody's going to be mad at NAR and bail, so we're going to start our own MLS, you know? And that, although that's happened, there's been talk about it all across the country of new MLSs, for lack of a better term, new MLSs where you don't have to be a member of any association, and you can put listings on there, and it's just the wild, wild west as far as, you know, can we offer comp? Can we, you know, can we do whatever we want? And the answer is, yeah, you can do whatever you want because we're not regulated, you know, by the NAR or by the old MLS. I mean, is it going to work? I don't know. You know, is it a giant, in my opinion, a giant pool of like future victims of class action lawsuits? Yeah, for sure. And you know, I've said this from the beginning, and I'll say it until I'm done, and that is, the NAR is no different than any other organization that we, as you know, human beings give money to. They screw up a lot of things, and they have a lot of rules that are kind of stupid. But overall, if you truly understand what the NAR is, I'm a huge, huge fan. Even after the lawsuits, I'm a huge, huge fan. Nobody, it's kind of like being a gun owner and saying, I don't like the NRA, or I want the NRA to go away, right? I mean, let's be honest. If the NRA went away, and if there's anybody that hates guns in this meeting, I'm sorry. But if the NRA went away, we probably wouldn't be able to purchase a firearm at all. I mean, that's the reality of it, right? If the NAR went away, if we stopped giving them money, our industry, our housing industry would be so regulated and so taxed and so overburdened with bureaucracy that it would probably crumble. At its core, the NAR is a lobby group. It's a PAC, okay? And they do things that we never hear about at the federal level and the state level to protect our livelihoods and to protect our industry that we will never, ever hear about. On the other side of things, without the NAR, I keep getting them confused with the NRA. The NAR, we would have had massive exposure as individual brokers and real estate agents to this class action lawsuit. For us, they were like a giant shield, right? And we received a massive amount of protection under the fact that they took the hit and they settled it as an industry. So anybody that tells me I don't want to be an NAR member, or I don't want to be in a brokerage that's an NAR member, and screw the NAR and all of that, really doesn't understand what the hell they're talking about. Like, they have no clue. Are they perfect? Absolutely not. Do they charge us too much money? Absolutely so. You know, do they have a bunch of rules that we don't want to follow and are stupid and cumbersome and make our life difficult? Yes, they do. Absolutely. Is it all worth it? In my opinion, yes, absolutely yes. I want a shield, number one. Okay, it's kind of like, why did you open a corporation? Because I want a veil that you can't pierce. You can't get to me until you go through the NAR. Okay. Number two, I want somebody at the federal level and the state level fighting for our industry and keeping it alive and keeping it untaxed and keeping it unregulated and doing all of the things so that we can go to work and we can make money and we can support our family. I don't want to do that. I don't want to write letters. I don't want to write emails. I don't want to stand in front of, you know, the Capitol with a sign. I don't want to do any of that. I want them to do that. I want them to grease the wheels, shake the hands, you know, do all the. Brendan and I have well, she's retired, but we have a really high power lobbyist in the family. I want her doing that. Okay. I want her doing that. And that at the end of the day is why I will always support the NA. Will I talk shit about them? You bet. Absolutely. I will. Will I complain about them? You bet. Absolutely. Will I pay my bill right on time? And will I ever leave? No, I won't. I'll never leave. And I think if it ever got to the point where people started really getting momentum behind, let's just call it the NAR competitors, that would come out and people would figure it out. You don't want to be involved in this housing. If you take housing, construction, and real estate combined, it's the #1 most litigious business in the world. Okay. If you separate real estate and construction, construction's #1 and real estate's like #3. You don't want to be operating in that sphere without some kind of protection. You just don't. All right. You just don't. Does that answer the question, Brendan, really, really long-windedly? Yeah. Okay. Anything else? Anybody else? I think you all have the power at this point to unmute if you want. Yeah, I've given you all the power. Okay. Well, if that's it, then we'll wrap up. Now, next Thursday, folks, is Thanksgiving. If you want to show up, go ahead. I won't be here, but feel free to chime in on the meeting and get some stuff done. I will not be here. So we'll kick off the next meeting after that. Obviously, in the meantime, if you need me, you know how to find me. And I hope that you all have an absolutely fantastic Thanksgiving holiday. I know that I will. So with that said, I'm gonna press the button in like 4 seconds. 4, 3, 2, go Pittsburgh.